Wonders and Miracles podcast, where we celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm Liza Lawrence. I'm glad to have you join me as we celebrate wonders and miracles together. All right, well, I am here today with Lavonne. She's from Boston, and she's going to share a miracle experience that happened in her life that really spurred on her mission and her purpose and her work now that she does. So first of all, a couple experiences. One that happened in 1996-97 that prepared her for her really culminating experience in 1999. And I'm excited to hear the details of these stories, and I appreciate you being on the show today. So tell us what happened back in 1997.
Well, it was pretty feeling bad about myself. My self-esteem was kind of shot. And I just thought, life is just a pain in the butt. And my friends just decided to pull me out of the house and let's go to a trip to Jackson Hole, because I born and raised in Boston, but I currently live in Utah. So they pulled me out of the house and said, we're going on a road trip. And we headed out to Jackson Hole. We were driving and I didn't have my seatbelt on, and I always wear my seatbelt. And I heard this little tiny voice in my ear that said, put your seatbelt on. And it was very soft and very kind. And I'm just like, I'm not putting on my seatbelt. I was in my rebellious stage, and it was an audible voice, very clear. And yeah. And then we just kept driving. As we got closer to Jackson Hole, they stopped at a convenience store. We all got out and got goodies and went back in the car, and she started the car and I heard the voice again, but it was a little bit louder, and it said, put your seatbelt on. And I'm like, I'm not putting my seatbelt on. I'm tired. I'm going to lay down, And we keep driving and driving and driving. It's getting dark at this point. And I heard it again. It was like, put your seatbelt on. And it was like an authoritative voice. And I'm just like, whatever, I'm tired of being pushed around. I'm not doing anything. I'm tired. I'm just going to lay down and go to sleep. And sure enough, I laid down to go to sleep, and I was woken up by the girls in the front seat screaming. And I'm like, what is going on? And I sit up, and as I sit up, I see this huge, like a granddaddy's still truck, not the way they make them now, the old-fashioned kind from the farm.
Yes.
Barreling down straight towards us. No matter where my friend went, the truck was following. So deer headlights. And I just went, I'm going to die, because it was too late. She was coming, and finally my friend completely stopped the car. She wasn't even doing 1 mile per hour. It was like 0, and she hit us head on. It was a woman. And she hit us head on, and I went up and over the front seat and literally kissed the windshield, when literally I felt 2 physical hands snatched me, grabbed. I mean, I could feel the grabbing and snatched me back into my seat. And I remember being in shock. Now, let me just tell you, going up and kissing the windshield was very euphoric. I don't recommend it, but it was one of those things where it was complete surrender.
Uh-huh.
And all you had to do was just totally trust. There was nothing I could do. I'm like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm out,
Yeah. And
of course, the lady gets out of the truck. She starts running down the hill, and we're like, where is she going in the darkness, And I get out of the car, and there's glass on the ground and everything. And I'm standing there, and I hear the same voice. It's not your time. There's much for you to do.
Wow.
There is much for you to do. And it was very clear. And then we chased the woman down the street to make sure she was okay.
Yeah. And was she okay?
She was drunk out of her mind.
Oh, yeah.
So she was a drunk driver. Yeah.
Wow.
So we just sat her down on the grass and called the police, and, they took care of everything. And I went to the ER for obvious reasons, and just basically sprained the left side of my body. And then I was just like, you angel sprained my back.
By grabbing me.
How dare you hurt me like that? No, it was just funny, Fast forward, it prepared me for the work I'm doing now currently with after my daughter's transitioning. I don't call it death or dying. I think it's a potty word.
Uh-huh.
And it's almost like when you hear the word, it's the finale, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that she has taught me is that I'm still here and we are just getting started. So,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to hear about that. So take us to that moment and that experience you had with your daughter.
She was born 3 weeks early. I've had 2 pregnancies prior to her, never any difficulties, normal pregnancies, nobody early, nobody late. And she came 3 weeks early, and the doctor was very nervous in the room and just said her heartbeat was faint and didn't quite know what was going on. And you could tell she was panicking, but trying not to, because she was the primary physician through the whole pregnancy and never saw any kind of issues.
Uh-huh.
And when she was born, they rushed her into the incubator, and of course I was freaking out, but they took her over to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake, and I was at LDS Hospital in Salt Lake. They told me, in a couple of days, like in a day or two, you'll be able to get out and you can go see her and make sure everything's okay. I talked to a doctor on the phone the very next day, and they just said, we don't know what's going on. She seems to have a heart murmur, which is pretty common, and it tends to heal itself. And just so happened she was up in the NICU, and that's the intensive care unit for newborns. And a doctor happened to walk by her and see her in the incubator and basically said, "What is that on her skin?" And he noticed these patches on her skin. It was what we call cafe pigmentation, cafe latte pigmentation.
Okay.
I think I'm saying that right. He had seen it before, didn't quite remember. He contacted NIH, National Institute of Health out in Maryland, and they told them to look for ABC, and he found ABCDEFG, and she immediately became a case study for NIH.
Oh, wow.
So they diagnosed her, they diagnosed her with McCune-Albright syndrome, which is where the cells go kind of chaotic and the whole endocrine system is mixed up, and basically they weren't performing their proper function. So overactive adrenal glands, which created overproduction of cortisol, and osteopenia, brittle bone, also her thyroid, hypothyroidism, enlarged heart. So she had all the specialists, the cardiologists, the pulmonary doctors, the endocrinologists. So it was a huge team. And NIH wanted to fly her out, and they just said, we don't think that she would be able to make it if we fly her out. And so they did all of their care via phone, via email, and I do believe one main doctor actually flew in to look at her and study her a little bit more. Wow. Long story short, we were able to take her home for a little bit. She was on oxygen basically 24/7. We had, hospice in there with the machines and things like that. I shouldn't say hospice because they didn't know if she was going to transition out. They just knew she needed additional care. And so they gave me all the equipment to take care of her with, if that makes sense. So we had a couple of scares going into the pediatrician, and one where she started like almost coding enough that she was turning blue, and she says she's okay for now, but get her straight to primaries. And then she was hospitalized again in the PICU because she's a little bit older now. And at 5 pounds, 5 months and 5 pounds, she just never gained the weight. And when she went back into the hospital the second time, she was able to get up to 7 pounds. So the second time she did not leave. She was on 17 medications. There is no cure for McCune-Albright syndrome. The 17 medications were to suppress symptoms. And through all of this, I remember just staying positive. And at that time, I was an active Reiki practitioner. I was teaching Reiki classes, which is a Japanese method of healing. My definition of it is when you're laying on of hands, and it's a practice of love. There are some symbols in the Reiki tradition that are supposed to increase the power and bless you spiritually and mentally. And so I always called Reiki the practice of love. Anytime you touch, that's why they hold the babies. I take the woo out of it because there's really no woo in it. It's woo when you don't understand or comprehend it,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
and then don't use your discernment.
Right. No, I love that definition. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been my personal experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have doctors coming in asking if I needed to be medicated, because I would kick them out of the room if they were negative or, not praying on my child. And I told them, I said, my God is a healing God. And I honor science and I honor the spirit of it all, but I also know that there are miracles and I'm looking for one.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, they wanted to put me on medication.
Uh-huh.
But I have a lot of people from so many different backgrounds. I mean, Christians, Buddhists, New Agers, metaphysical people that were just surrounding me and the baby and giving love, because that's where it's at. And that pulled me through. It was hard, very hard and very challenging. And I spent many days and many nights there. She stopped breathing several different times when they thought she was okay. And then they'd have to put her back on, CPAPs and things like that. And then eventually she ended up on life support because she couldn't breathe for herself. And I just kept asking, how much more of this, But in the meantime, I would go into the hospital and the parents would come to me and say, will you come and lay hands on my child? Will you come? I saw what you did with your daughter, because, she was hooked up to monitors. So I go in and I apply the love medicine, the Reiki and the prayers and everything else. And they could literally see on the monitors, her heart rate was out of control. And her blood pressure, her pulse, everything. And the monitors would just go down. It would just go down. And the nurses would be like, did you just do that? I'm like, well, it's just love. It's love. I'm working with the team. It's my holy team, And so we would see that all the time. And I was able to be of service and assistance to a lot of other parents and things like that as a result. Now, what ended up happening was I started seeing things outside of the natural eyes more than I did as a child. And I would just be like, well, who is behind that child? Or what's going on over in that corner? And I would call them angels, and they would just be like, we're here to support the child, or we're here to give comfort, we're here to support. And then I was wondering, why am I seeing this? Mm-hmm. And then I realized it's because, I brought it in as a child myself, and it's just become stronger because I'm in this situation. But also because I had one foot on this side of the veil and the other foot where she was, because she was transitioning out. And I think a lot of parents, that's why they feel like they're losing their minds, or they feel like they can't live or go or move forward. It's because literally a part of them leaves with their wee ones, or any loved one. Yeah. And so here I am being taught, you see, but I'm paying attention, even though I'm overwhelmed.
Yes.
But I know there's something bigger to this picture, and I've always been, I'm the daughter of my father was a preacher. I grew up in foster care. That's a whole nother story for another podcast. And I got to experience different traditions and belief systems and cultures through that foster care process. So I was visiting all types of denominations and groups and things like that. It got me to the point where I'm able to work with people no matter where they're at.
I love that.
I can go where they're at and speak their language and still support and assist them in that healing process, that well-being process. Yeah. And so that was going on. And then I remember one night going home really, really late. And, I should say day, it was probably about 1 a.m. And I went into my room and I just laid on my bed and I had it. I hit the wall, the emotions, the tears, the why God, what's going on? Please assist me in seeing the bigger picture and, staying strong and knowing that she's going to be healed. And literally I closed my eyes, and as fast as I closed them, I opened them, and my room was full of the most brilliant light. And again, what I say were my heavenly angelic hosts coming and just ministering to me. And they basically said, we know that you believe. We know you believe. Oh, I'm going to get emotional. And they just said, we know you believe and we know that you have faith, but she's going to go.
Hmm.
And it's okay, you know? And then they explained to me, they said, when you give birth and when you have a child, it's like, I'm showing my fingers here, it's like your heart's locked and she can't let you go and you can't let her go. But we want you to know it's okay. This is just love. And that's why it's very difficult for you, you know? I just said that we honor you for believing, and we honor you for being her mom, and but she's going to leave, and she's actually stayed longer than she was supposed to.
Oh,
which is interesting.
That
Yeah.
is.
And in that moment, I have to tell you, I felt so much appreciation and so much gratitude. It wasn't even so much like, oh no, I'm gonna lose my little girl. It was more like, you cared enough about me to come and tell me that it's okay to let go, that I don't have to keep fighting, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I could trust what I've been feeling, you know? And that was the experience. And I remember getting up the next day and going in, well, the same day, and going in, and there was this doctor that was there. And see, this is the beauty of it all. When it's divine timing, it's like everything lines up like a fine symphony.
Yeah.
And you can hear everything in the symphony. Maybe that's why I love the symphony so much. And I go into the hospital, and there's this, every week they shift the doctors, and there was this one doctor that pulled me aside and said, what do you want me to do? It's my week.
Wow.
There is nothing else we can do for her, and she is struggling. And I don't know if they're telling you or letting you know that they could do something, but there's nothing else that we can do. At this point, she's 5 months old, 7 pounds, on all these medications. Now they put her on morphine. And he said, so what do you want me to do? But because I had that visitation, I was able to say, I want her off all the medications. I want to take her off life support, and I just want to hold my baby.
Mm.
And he said, let me see what I can do. And then we went and we met with the ethics board. I don't even know if it was the same day or a week later or a couple of days later. I don't remember. And we met with the ethics board up at Primary Children's for the second time, because we were up there before. But again, this fine symphony. I go up there, the doctors there, the nurses that I'd never requested to be there, they wanted to come up and show their love and their support. And they spoke on my behalf, and they said, we have parents up here all the time that are quick to want to let go, and there's still hope. They're stressed. They're stressed about their mental state, their emotional state, their financial state. But this mama, if she says her daughter is ready to go, then she's ready to go. Now, here's the part that I skipped over, which is really key. I had a dream, and in the dream, my daughter came to me and she said, I'm ready to go be my voice, or be my voice, I'm ready to go.
Wow.
Yeah. It was after the visitations. And so when I got that from her, I knew it's just time. And so us going and meeting with the ethics board was me being her voice. I was able to usher her in. I was able to say, I want proof that there is a creator, there is a God. I want proof that there are angels, because that's where I was in my life, where I was in disbelief and I had turned away and I just didn't want anything to do with it. You know, you guys are just blowing hot air, you know. And then that's when she came into my life and literally was the physical manifestation of an angel on the planet, you know, in my life. Yeah. And that's when my whole life just kind of turned around, and I stepped into my life's work and my life's purpose. And that is what she brought to me. And she reminds me that when I have days. And so we met with the ethics board, and they agreed. And one doctor came in late, and she's like, well, I think we should do the adrenal surgery. And I'm like, well, first of all, who are you? And you're late. I mean, it was one of those things where I felt like I was the angel for her, the mommy for her. Yeah. But not only that, a steward of this soul while in her transitioning phase. Wow. What an honor, you know, and to be able to stand in that power and that passion and in that truth, to know that it was time for her to transition out of her physical and return to, the creator. And so we left the meeting, and the doctor came into my room, and he said, here's the form to sign for the adrenal surgery. You can either accept or reject it. And I said, I reject it. And I didn't sign the paper. And he just looked at me and he said, you're making the right decision. And he said she would probably just pass on the table. There's no way.
Yeah.
And so he said, I know that you made the right decision. And I knew in my heart I made the right decision because I was following a greater power than
right. Yeah. Than science and medicine.
At the last minute.
Yeah.
Yes. So we were able to take her off life support. I held her for an hour. And we had our own special little ceremony in the room. It felt like it was an hour, but it felt like 5 minutes. And she gave 3 deep cleansing breaths. And I had my hand over her heart. And, that's the last thing to stop.
Yeah.
And she literally, and this is the part that, I'll just tell it. She took that last breath, and literally I felt her because I was holding her in my arms like this, and I felt this immense amount of heat from the crown of her head leave her body and immediately stand beside me.
Wow.
Immediately. And the gentleman that was next to me, he was my spiritual advisor, he was sitting there and he said, do you feel that? So he felt it too. And he goes, I have never experienced that before. I just got up out of the chair and I placed her body back in the bed, and I just looked at it and I just thought, wow, this isn't you. This is, so I'm going through all these things, and I'm not even really crying. I'm just like, wow, what did I just witness?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just the power of life after life, and just the truthfulness of that, and that we don't die, and that there's more. And I remember just picking up her things and walking out of the room, and there was a friend with me, and we were standing by the elevator, and the elevator doors open up, and clear as day, I hear, wait for me, I'm coming with you. Clear. And I had my head down like, oh my gosh, my friend's going to think I am up in the night, even though my friends already knew I was weird. Turned and she looked at me and she goes, did you hear that? So again, witnesses all around. I'm just confirmation of witnesses everywhere. And during the whole celebration of preparing for her celebration of life, all the doors open. Things were just given and things came together. She had all female pallbearers, and it was like fresh snow. March 17th of St. Patty's Day, was when she passed. And so I think I buried her maybe 5 days later or something, and she's just been a light ever since. She was throwing snowballs at people. My friends, they swore it was her because they would get sad and somber, and then they would look up and all of a sudden the snow would just go in their face.
Cute. How funny.
I never mentioned her name. Her name is Kiva Deja Wells. So Miss Kiva is what I call her.
Miss Kiva. I love that. I love that. And do you feel like she's still with you and has been with you all these years?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There was a time right after we buried the body that I felt her say, I have to go, and then she was gone, but then she was right back. But she was very mindful to let me know I've got to go now. Like there was something she had to do, because they're allowed to come and be present and be around the family. They'd stick around, and then I tend to hear people say, I don't feel them anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, they're busy. They don't just stop. They, there's much going on. But anytime you call them, they're like, oh, I'll be back.
Interesting.
And I step in, and every time I have a speaking event or a speaking engagement, she is right there. A good example was last week. I had an event. I do it monthly in my office called Connections and Insights. And I was talking to people, and we had a full house, and I was just sharing. I went, oh my goodness, Kiva wants me to talk about her, and she hasn't done that in a while. So I gave a little bit of her story, and she was right there the whole time.
Wow.
And I don't know, maybe there was somebody there that just needed to hear her story and be reminded that it's okay and that their loved ones are okay. And so she's very active in my life. And I've asked her since, what do you do? What are you up to? And she's like, I help other children transition because it was very difficult for her to transition out. The alarms would go off because of thank you, science, when she would want to slip, and they would take it off because they thought she was okay. As soon as she starts slipping, the alarms would go off.
Wow.
And she said she worked with children that were struggling to transition. And then she graduated to working with children to heal their trauma. I mean, just crazy stuff. I'm like, okay,
Wow.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
That is interesting.
She still works with people that have been there, that showed up for her when she was here physically. She will go to them and they know her and they remember what she feels like. And I had a friend that was very depressed in early 2000 and was actually contemplating committing suicide. And she called me and she said, the only reason why I didn't do it, she says, I was very close. And she said, I heard Kiva. I heard her. And this person was very close to Kiva, very, very close. And she said, if you do that, my mom will be so mad at you.
Oh.
I'm like, how should they guilt you? She goes, no, it was from a loving place. I'm like, and it's like, and plus you got too much to do and you're not done, and but just because of her presence and those words, it just snapped her back into reality. We're still in relationship. And that's the core of what I teach, is that it's not about getting over it. It's not about the hereafter. And I know that's a big deal for a lot of people, but it's about communing and connecting and still expanding that relationship, especially if there's been things unsaid. I want people to know that it's never too late to reconcile, and it's never too late to love on your loved one. And I know everyone's got different beliefs about that, but I can only go from my own personal experience.
I love that
sorry.
Message. Yeah, no, I love that message. So my husband and I were fans of near-death experience books and near-death experiences. And there's often, you'll see that, especially in suicide cases where they're wanting to apologize and reach out to their family and let them know that they're okay, and that because there's so much grief, I think, associated with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they work, with the suicide, they work overtime to reconcile that with their families because they know that they're upset with them. From my experience, we don't just shed away our memories when we leave here. We take our memory. That's why when people say the only thing you take with you are your relationships, the only thing you take with you is your love, so how much love do you have? How much love are you giving? How much are you loving yourself? And so when I hear these things, I'm like, okay, I still know there's more, and that we don't know 1000%, but the information I've received and experienced personally firsthand gives me a lot of hope and a lot of peace and a lot of comfort for myself and for others, and I'm not ready to go anytime soon, but I know that when it's my time to go, I used to be so afraid of death. And I am not 1 inch, 1 iota. My first experience of death, and I don't like to use that word, but the transitioning and passing was my sister when I was 6 years old,
Oh, wow.
We won't get into that's another podcast.
Yeah.
But that was my world. That's that. And at the hand of my father, who I've now resolved, and we love each other and I've forgiven, but it was his fault, along with the stepmother, and you're preaching, but you're killing your kid, you're starving your children. And then one actually died. So the good news about that is that I never lost my love for the Creator, for God. I never disconnected. Jesus is my best friend, and even as a child has always been there for me when everybody went away, when I felt my loneliest, like literally sitting on my bed and saying, it's going to be okay.
Wow.
It's hard right now, but it's going to be okay. So I've taken that from my childhood clear into my adulthood. and he's not a respecter of persons, people, places, or things. That relationship is very personal, and it's individual for each, it's personal for each individual.
Uh-huh.
But that never went away, even though my daddy was a preacher man and,
Mm-hmm.
lost custody of his children. And now we are thicker than thieves, and I really love him. And he's grown a lot as well.
Yeah.
He's very, you can tell he's learned and has expanded in his own spirituality. Yeah. So our
Yeah.
crosses have, and back to the car accident. It's not your time, Lavonne.
Yeah.
There's much for you to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know,
Yeah.
yak, but I get really passionate about this subject, and
Well, I love
oh,
it. I know, I love it. And I teach human development. And so one of my assignments I give my students is to examine their childhood and how it's impacted their life and affected their development. And it sounds like early on you had these amazing experiences, painful, difficult, to teach you what you needed and to prepare you for your purpose and what you're doing.
yes.
Which, tell us what you do and where can people find you if they wanted to work with you.
So, I work with moms that have lost children and assisting them in their well-being. And I work with people who are going through the grieving process. What I'm noticing that a lot of my clients it's more about not so much a loss of a loved one, but loss of self.
Yeah.
So I'm getting people that are having other extreme cases of loss. My sole purpose is to enable people to go within and actually find their inner strength and start remembering who they really are. And as they remember who they are, they realize we are eternal beings and that there is no death. But in the meantime, there's the other part of my work where it's like, let's come together and bring your joy back. Bring your peace back, bring your celebration back, bring that calm back. And let's not get over it. Let's go ahead and be about processing it in a way that is gives them their life back. I want to say healing, in a way to heal. We'll just use that word.
Well, and I think it's okay to say it's a healing process,
It
and
is.
it's their journey towards
They
being
must
whole.
do the work. Yes, they must do the work. And what's beautiful about it is that I have this 5-week workshop that I do like twice a year, where I put them to work. I'm like, okay, you're here, you're ready. Okay, let's talk about it. And we get emotional. We talk about their loved ones, their transition, and then I go, okay, now what? Well, I guess in the next life I'll see. Oh, really? So you're going to carry this around until you transition out, pass on yourself,
Right.
you'll pass away yourself, and then do this. I said, I tell people, it is beautiful when you can do the work right where you're at. So guess what? When you transition, everything's clear.
Yeah.
You're ready to rock and roll. I don't know. I just love this. I want to do this 24/7.
Well, thank you so much. I could probably sit and chat with you all day.
I know.
So, any other lessons you learned or things you wanted to share, or messages that you wanted to share before we end?
Honestly, to everybody out there, be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and you do have the answers within you. And one of the quickest way to get there is to stay connected to source, stay connected to the creator, stay connected to God, stay connected to all that is good and positive in your life. And will you have challenging days? Absolutely. But when you're willing to sit, be still, do your heartfelt prayer, because I share that all the time with every group that I gather with. You deserve to sit with yourself day and night, or whenever you feel the need to, and really make that connection and just be in that presence. And so a lot of times I will just sit in appreciation and love. That's all. I will just sit in it. Absolutely. And it will consume you.
Yeah.
So let it consume you and love on.
I love that. I love that message.
Love on.
And love on. I know. I actually noticed that about your name. I love that.
Well, if you go on my Facebook, it's always #LoveOn. And and if anybody wants to find me, you can find me on LavonneWells.com. So that's Lavonne Wells, WELLS.com. And I'm on Facebook as the spiritual teacher. So
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have to ask you, was this your given name?
yes.
That's amazing. Lavonne
Well, it's
Wells.
hilarious. Yeah.
I love that. Well, it fits your work and it fits you. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's fun. That's fun. Well, thank you so much, but I appreciate you sharing.
I appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to this miracle story. Please subscribe to my channel if you liked it. You can also find me on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. And remember to notice and celebrate miracles everywhere, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen.